Allen Company and Big Al will be at the I-80 Truckers Jamboree. See you there.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is planning for a world of autonomous vehicles, and they're greasing the skids, making it easier for autonomous vehicles that don't meet federal safety standards to hit the road. Scott Thompson talks with Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine. Also on today's program, people scamming other people is nothing new, and it certainly predates the internet. But the modern age has opened the door to more varieties of scams. I'll discuss some of the most common ones that are related to your income tax with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Let's turn now to another Mark. Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine has been following a story out of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the USDOT, and it stands regarding autonomous vehicles. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
I almost called you Marks.
Well, that's
Mark
fine
S.
too.
You're Mark S.
Yeah, there's multiple Marks here. We got plural. But no, yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you as always. We're all, of course, I think adjusting to and trying to figure out what's going on with autonomous vehicles and autonomous tech. And I think that includes NHTSA as well. They just put out some guidance that really paves the way for these autonomous vehicle companies to kind of ramp up their operations. This particular move is about the exemption process, and we're going to talk about what this might mean kind of moving forward. But this particular move out of NHTSA, what can you tell us? Yeah,
and so this, just to clarify too, this involves autonomous cars as well as autonomous trucks. It's kind of runs the gamut there. And right now that there is an exemption process for up to 2,500 autonomous vehicles every year that don't meet the normal federal motor vehicle safety standards. Basically, doesn't have a steering wheel, doesn't have operational manual brakes, rear view mirrors, that sort of thing that obviously if it's being completely autonomous, self-driving, that they don't need because the driver is not a part of the action at that point. So right now there's only 2,500 of those. What this exemption is doing, basically what they're trying to streamline, they're saying that it is taking too long for these manufacturers to get the exemption. So NHTSA, and we hear from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, all the way back to his confirmation hearing, has been very vocal about the idea of wanting to pave a way for innovation, and they want to beat China at the autonomous vehicle game. They want America to be first in all of this. So even though there's a lot of concerns, I think rightfully so, about already the lack of regulations regarding autonomous vehicles and maybe the push being too soon, there's at the same time there is definitely a push for being first here, and this is something. Although the details of exactly how all of this is going to be streamlined and moving forward, it is a sign that they are going for that direction. I do think the next thing that you can kind of expect here is that these autonomous vehicle manufacturers are probably going to want that 2,500 number either increased or there not be a number that limits the amount of these types of vehicles that can be out there.
Yeah, and this is a move. No surprise here. I know the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association applauded it. To me, I hear this and I think about guardrails and I think about the safety concerns when we see all these robotaxis in the various cities that they're operating in and the problems that they've encountered over the years. I understand both sides of this. I understand the idea of kind of removing those guardrails and making sure that innovation is allowed to kind of flourish, on its own. But the big thing that I know we are concerned about, truck drivers are concerned about, is the safety aspect of this. And I imagine we're going to hear more from them in the coming days, not just necessarily regarding this move, but to other moves down the line. Because as you pointed out, I think the administration is really open to the idea of just, let's take the guardrails off.
Yeah, and when we're talking about these types of vehicles too, when we're talking fully autonomous, when we're talking about not having a steering wheel, not having manual operating brakes. So in these situations, there's not even an opportunity for the driver to take over if something is flawed, to turn off the self-driving and now I'm going to take over and drive this myself. That's not an option in these. So you're really going all in on the idea that this autonomous self-driving works and that there are no problems. And I think we know that that's not necessarily true yet. I mean, I think most proponents of it are going to say, at the end of the day, if you run a bunch of these autonomous vehicles, yes, there'll probably be some crashes at the end of the year, but they would contend that there'll be fewer.
Sure.
But I'm certainly skeptical. I'm very skeptical when we're talking about heavy duty tractor trailers, 80,000-pound vehicles. Especially if they're carrying a hazmat load or anything sort of dangerous. That stuff sort of scares me because it's not just complete automation that it's all around a bunch of other automated vehicles and they're all running under the same system. That's not what's happening. Yeah. They're dealing with a lot of human factors. We have more and more pedestrians, out on road these days, more cyclists, just lots of unforeseen events that they could be encountering. And I don't think that it's perfected yet. And that's my biggest fear about all of this. But so far of this isn't anything major. This is the idea of just kind of making the process expediting it a little bit. So we'll see where it goes. And once we have some more details of exactly how they're going to streamline it, we'll give a better opportunity to, give a full opinion there.
Yeah, we'll get more details. But again, I think this move, it does tell us what they're thinking, right, and the direction they want to take.
Yeah, and I'll just say real quick, too, I reached out to the advocates for auto highway safety that has been critical of some of the moves of NHTSA and regulators or lack of moves that they've done regarding autonomous vehicles. And they're basically wait and see on this. They want to see the details before they make a comment, of what their, kind of statement is regarding this latest information.
You can check out Mark's. I will get your name right, I swear, Mark. I do know your name. You can check out Mark's outstanding work each and every day at landline.media. Mark, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Scott.
Another big story that we are following right now is with regard to diesel prices. They spiked last week, according to the Energy Information Administration. The national average last week jumping 10 cents to $3.57 a gallon. This was actually before the conflict between Israel and Iran flared up. And one of many concerns amid that situation is the effect it could have on fuel prices throughout the world. Every region jumped on the EIA survey last week. This week's increase, however, a bit more muted, according to ProMiles.com, which had the national average Tuesday morning at $3.47 a gallon, up just 2 cents compared to the same day last week, but something we will continue to monitor. And that's Landline Now News for today. Scott Thompson reporting.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Randall W. Strand of Lintner, Missouri. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 45 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 338 years without causing a single accident. Next, I'll discuss some of the most common scams taxpayers face this year with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear. Visit howsproducts.com.
With rising costs affecting everyone, switching to a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper can help you avoid expensive repairs and downtime. Save money and keep your truck running smooth with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
People trying to take advantage of others is an old problem, as old as any problem people face. But with the internet age has come a whole new batch of new ways to scam people, and many of them are related to your income taxes. You're listening to Landline Now, and I'm your host, Mark Reddick. Welcome back to the program. There are many scams that are far, far older than the internet. Before the advent of the personal computer, they came by fax, by mail, over the phone, or in person, and most of those still exist. But back then, it was rare for anyone to, for example, use a credit card unless they were present at the time and place the credit card was used. Now, with a few keystrokes, your personal information can circle the planet in seconds. Each year, the IRS tries to warn people about the worst tax-related scams, a list it calls its Dirty Dozen. Recently here on the show, I discussed a few of those with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service, and I recently continued that conversation with more information on scams. So Shasta, we're talking about these very, very common scams and the IRS list, and we covered the first part of it in our previous conversation, but basically they put out this Dirty Dozen tax scams every year. And although we've gone through a few of them, the rest of them really deserve some attention. And one of the ones that comes up next is one that I've never even heard of before, which is credits for sick leave and family leave. How are people using that idea to scam people? What's going on here?
Okay, so this was a credit that was available for people that were self-employed during the pandemic, specifically for 2020 and 2021. And now the IRS is seeing instances where taxpayers are using in with their returns for those years the form for sick leave and family leave for self-employed individuals, but falsely claiming the credit based on employee wages, which it's not, it's for self-employed. So that's been a common thing out there, telling people that they can get this credit when they cannot, they're not eligible. And it just creates issues when you file these returns incorrectly.
Huh. Now, a lot of these tend to be, like when we talked earlier about phishing and schmishing, that's where someone outside is attempting to scam the taxpayer in some manner. Is this something where there's a third party trying to scam the taxpayer? And if so, what are they getting out of that?
Now, and this is I think in some instances, there's situations where people just want to create chaos. There's also situations where there may be, a sketchy tax preparer who, is trying to, use this to, get fees for doing these returns. There are, taxpayers out there, they're bogus, and they're saying maybe situations where their fee is based on the refund. So they try to inflate a refund with these incorrect forms. So that has been a big problem. So this is why the IRS is trying to make people aware of these things are not legitimately available.
Many years ago, and I'm not going to use the name here, but many years ago, I had a tax preparer, and luckily now I have a very good one that I've used for years. But I remember the expression, let's run it up the flagpole and see who salutes, which is really not something you want to do with the IRS.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Well, the next one on the list here is another one I find kind of fascinating, which is a bogus self-employment tax credit. I'm aware of a lot of things involving taxes and self-employment, but I've never heard of a tax credit. What is the scam here?
Well, this again is, specific to the pandemic time, during COVID, and it, people are putting false information information out saying this is a way for the self-employed people to get big payments for the COVID pandemic period. And it misleads people into thinking they qualify for these big credits and payouts, and they do not. So you really have to research if you're filing back taxes during these years, 2020 and 2021, and people are promising you, or you hear there's these big, credits and possible refunds, you really need to do your own research and make sure that the people you're getting this information from are, professional tax preparers.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear to folks out there listening, doing your own research has to involve going to reliable, factual sources. And with taxes, very often, Shasta, doesn't the IRS put this information on their website? I mean, they're pretty open about what you can and can't do, right?
Right, correct. And, if if something sounds too good to be true, it likely isn't. So that's the thing. Anything promising, credits you've never heard about, big refunds, no one can really promise that. So you've really got to research, check out the IRS website, because they have so much information available about specific scams. Like we're going through this list of 12, but there's even more than these 12. These are the most common things that the IRS is seeing. So they're trying to educate people, watch out, be careful. So it's worth the time to go onto the IRS website and do a little research and pull up all this information that's available to you to, help save you, what could potentially turn into a nightmare.
Yeah, you never want anything that could lead to an audit.
Correct. And it can trigger that very, very much so.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the base principles with all this is just avoid the audit. So
yes, always. Always.
Well, let's go on to the next one here. And this is one, I don't know how many truckers would be involved in this, but it's important to go ahead and let people know about it, which is improper household employee taxes. So household employee, who are they referring to here?
They're talking about, say a caregiver, a nanny, someone who works in the home. So then they falsely create these household employees that don't exist, and then file to claim a refund based on false sick and family medical leave, based on wages that were never paid, because this is just simply a bogus thing.
Yeah. And again, not a lot of truck drivers that are probably going to be dealing with that situation in particular, but important to let people know that that's out there.
Right.
So moving on to the next one here, the overstated withholding scam. And with withholding, I'm assuming they're talking about here W-2 employees?
Yes. And, this is a more recent scam that's circulating and on social media, and apparently it's encouraging people to fill out fake W-2 forms and other income statements with false income, false withholding information. And here's the thing: the IRS verifies income and withholdings on tax returns, and if there isn't a matching filing from an employer, this is going to create a big problem, because these last two, this household employee and this overstated withholding scam, these are very serious. Whether these scam artists are creating chaos like we talked about, or charging for this false information, the bottom line is it's your tax return. And falling victim to a scam is one thing, but knowingly filing a false tax return with false information, that's fraud. And fraud comes with very severe consequences. So, don't fall for anything that's saying, make up your own W-2. That is going to end badly.
Well, and I think we can extend that to 1099s as well.
Absolutely. Both.
One of the things I learned from you is if you've received a form from a company or from an employer, the IRS always already has that form. And so,
yes.
Oh yeah, they have computers that do stuff and they find these things.
Yes, they do. They do. And, everyone knows the IRS is bogged down. Maybe it'll take a little time, but they will find it. They will hold up the tax return. They will not issue the refunds. So it in the end, it's not going to work. It's just creating just a disaster. So don't, be very aware of these,
anything.
these scams.
Let's just call fraud the other F word, because I think we need to make it clear just how bad that word is when you're dealing with a federal agency with computers and stuff. I want to skip here over the next one because I know we wanted to have some more time to talk about that, and just go to basically ghost tax return preparers. So what is a ghost preparer on tax returns? What is that referring to here?
Okay, so there's a lot of great tax preparers out there, but every industry has a sketchy side, and there are sketchy tax preparers out there. And the IRS wants to warn you and let you know that they're out there, and don't fall victim to them. And the IRS recommends that you watch for the common warning signs, which I just mentioned briefly before, is basing your fee on the size of a refund. Never use a tax preparer that bases his fees on the refund that, they say that you will be getting. Any tax preparer that's unwilling to sign your tax return and they want just you to sign it, that is a huge red flag as well. So these are the things. And then also what's another, if this tax preparer doesn't have a tax preparer identification number, all tax preparers, it's required by law, have a tax preparer identification number. So we all have them. It's required by law, and you never want to sign a blank or incomplete tax return. You want just always use a trusted tax professional for help.
Yeah, I remember the person who does my taxes, and you may know the wording better, but it was something to the effect of certified to represent before the IRS. I probably have that wrong, but basically there is a certification. Not just anybody can't go out there and be a tax preparer. If the IRS doesn't recognize you, then that tax preparer is putting themselves in trouble.
Right. If they're a legitimate tax preparer, they're going to have the tax preparer identification number. So that's one way to, ask to see that, ask what that is, make sure that it appears on the tax return. And that should be, a good way to double check.
Well, and something else that may be worth mentioning here, and that is that if you're looking for a tax preparer, look at some trusted sources out there. If you're part of an association, contact that association. I'm willing to bet that they have, I know OOIDA has, a list of people that we know are good at this and experienced in trucking. Ask friends who you trust and who operate a very legitimate and above board operation. Things like that can really help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been talking with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service about some of the common tax-related scams that have been identified by the IRS and included on the agency's 2025 Dirty Dozen Tax Scams list. After a short commercial break, we'll be back with more of my conversation with Shasta. But in the meantime, if you have questions about this or other tax matters, you can contact Shasta May by calling 1-888-407-1669, by email at smay@mbataxhelp.com, or by going to the company's website, mbataxhelp.com. Again, that's 1-888-407-1669, or email smay@mbataxhelp.com. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
At Truck Stop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone's FD694 drive tire for long haul and regional applications now delivers 126,000 more removal miles than the Yokohama TY517 MC2. Contact your Firestone commercial dealer to learn more.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Before the break, I was talking with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service about some of the common tax-related scams that have been identified by the IRS and included on the agency's 2025 Dirty Dozen tax scams list. We now continue that conversation in progress. Let's go ahead and move on here to another one of these topics, new client scams and spear phishing. New client scams sounds, well, straightforward, although I'm not sure I know precisely what it means, but I'm absolutely fascinated by the idea of spear phishing, this one being the PHISH phishing.
Yes.
What is spear phishing?
Yeah. So phishing, that's a term for like emails and text messages, like designed to get your, personal information. Where spear phishing, it's a phishing attempt. It's like geared towards a specific organization or a business. So tax professionals, we frequently are targets. I've been a target before too. Spear phishing has a greater potential for harm if the attack is successful. They can steal client data. They can steal a tax professional's identity. And then the thief can use that identity to file fraudulent returns. They can, with the information they can get, they can do malicious attacks that can compromise a whole practice, a whole business. So we're very careful, every tax preparer, we have all these encryptions, and the software that we buy to prepare taxes has so many layers of protection. A lot of our files, like if it's not recognized by my system, it'll go into a quarantine account that at the end of each day, I get this quarantine file and I go through each email that my system doesn't recognize as, familiar. So, so these are things that are specific. So spear phishing is just going after a specific industry or business.
Okay. And is this something that primarily is going to target people like tax preparers, or is there a way that spear phishing is used directly at truckers?
It would be, let's say if OIDA was, could have a spear phishing attack to try to get all the member information, like anyone, any group can be a victim here. And when you hear about medical offices, banks, being compromised, they're victims of spear phishing typically.
Okay. Well, that sounds horrible and dangerous.
It's terrifying. It's truly terrifying.
Now, the new client scams, what is that referring to, and how is that different from the spear phishing thing?
Well, the new client scams where you'll get a tax professional, let's say, and I've been, I've had these where someone will send me an email and they will act like that we've spoken and that we have a relationship. And what they're trying to do is get me to engage and to email them back so that they can then use that to, do a malicious attack, let's say. So we have to be really careful. And I'm lucky just because I personally speak to just about everyone who calls in, each client I interact with. So I'm very familiar. So if I and when I speak to someone just on the phone, a potential client, I always take that client information and I always set them up in my system. So my system will recognize if they contact me again. I have their email on file if I've emailed them information. So I'm lucky because I'm a smaller practice. I'm very involved in every aspect of it. And I take copious notes and I set them up in my system so that when you call me a year later, I still have a little outline of everything we discussed a year ago. It makes me look great. Like I just remember it all, but it takes effort and work, and that helps me to not become a victim.
You know, it's interesting. My father ran a business, and of course, he's been gone for many years, but I helped him computerize, and this is 25 plus years ago. So, of course, a very much an earlier form of computing, but he did something very similar. And it's important for a business when they're dealing with clients to have that kind of record there and to know what they've talked about before.
No, it is, and it's really recommended, and a lot of businesses do that, and especially now. And it does take a little extra time to say enter in every person you speak to, every person that requests information. They typically, not a huge percentage is going to end up signing up, but to have all that information and to know that, I can safely respond because I've talked to this individual before, it really, really helps to avoid disaster.
I do want to go back to something on the spear phishing based on what you said. And I actually have a personal experience here that I think applies, where I received a letter in the mail, and this was from the agency in my state that handles unemployment claims, saying that they had rejected my unemployment claim. Well, the problem is I'm not unemployed and I didn't apply. And so I didn't call any number on that letter because that's one of the ways they get you. I went ahead and looked up the number for the agency that handles unemployment and called them. And it turned out that someone out there had everything of mine. And I'm like everybody. I've had a number of these different companies that over the years have contacted me and say, oh my gosh, our database was compromised. Your information's out. They had my social, they had my address, they had my phone number, they had everything. One of the things that was recommended for me right away is go to the 3 major credit bureaus and lock down your credit so nobody can apply for a loan or a credit card or anything else in your name. And I'm assuming that that's advice that you would give as well. Is there other advice or other things people should be doing if they find themselves in that situation?
Now, the IRS, again, back to the IRS website, they have a guide if you've been a victim of identity theft, how to report it, how to prevent it, how to recover from it. And so there are a lot of recovery steps. So you can go on to the IRS website and you can find their identity theft guide, essentially, and you can download that, and that takes you through and helps you if you've been a victim. And typically, if you're reporting a loss, if you haven't been able to avoid a scam, you can report, if you have to report this to the police department. I'm sure they have recommendations. Their banks have recommendations, so you can contact all these agencies, these businesses, and follow their recommendations to recover from being a victim of a scam. I just recently read an article in it. The Federal Trade Commission said in 2024, Americans lost $470 million to tech scams alone. So if these bad actors are getting $470 million, this is not going to stop. This is not something that's going to go away. So it's on us to educate ourselves and try to avoid becoming a victim.
Yeah, one of the things I remember someone telling me once was maybe they only get 5 people out of 100,000 that respond and that they get. But those 5 people, they may be able to make enough money off scamming those 5 people to make their year.
Absolutely.
They don't need to get everybody.
Exactly. And the elderly, are a favorite victim, and they tend to want to resolve problems quickly. And when they get a misleading text, they just want, here, I'll pay the fee, whatever I did, whether it's the toll road scam, things like that. People just want to resolve it. There's texts that go out threatening arrest and contacting immigration. There's just all these threats. And typically, people that really are trying to collect money, they aren't threatening you. They're just saying, you have a bill, here's the bill. And you typically can call, research like you did, and you did your call to regarding the
Unemployment scheme.
Yeah. So you definitely, that was a smart thing to do. And everyone just needs to be so aware nowadays.
Yeah, I one of the ones that we're dealing with right now, a little off our topic, but people are getting text messages from state departments of transportation, allegedly, saying you owe toll money. You didn't pay your toll on this highway. And these people are sending them out. And a good example is I got one from Missouri. Missouri doesn't have toll roads. There's none here. And they're claiming that I owe the Missouri DOT money for an unpaid toll. There's no toll agency in America that is going to contact you by text over an unpaid bill. None.
That particular scam is so prevalent. I too got a text regarding toll road. It's everywhere. And so many people just go ahead and say, okay, let me just take care of this, whatever this is. Maybe the kids borrowed the car. What did they do? Let me just pay this real fast and resolve it. And it's awful.
Well, and the problem is they may just ask you for like $2.36. That was how much they wanted from me. What they're after really is you've got to plug in your credit card information to pay that bill online.
Yeah, the banking information. Yeah. Absolutely. And then off they go. And, and before a stop can be put to it, they could do a lot of damage.
Yeah, which is true of all of these scams.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's go on to this last category here. Misleading offers and compromise. So what is a proper offer and compromise? Let's kind of start there.
So the offer and compromise, it's really a great program that the IRS offers to help taxpayers settle their federal tax debt when they're unable to pay in full. So let's say that, you got yourself in a situation and you have this big giant tax liability, this big tax bill where it's just huge. There's no way on earth you're ever going to be able to pay it if you made payments for the rest of your life. So they have a program where you can settle with them for less than you owe. And it's a really great opportunity for people that find themselves in this type of situation where they have such a large tax liability and no way they're going to be able to get that paid. So it gives them some relief. But not everyone is accepted. And there are these companies out there. The IRS refers to them as mills that they aggressively advertise offer and compromise in misleading ways. I think a lot of people have heard the term, settle for pennies on the dollar. And they misrepresent, kind of making people think everyone qualifies. And a lot of people do not meet the qualifications. And it usually ends up costing taxpayers thousands of dollars that they pay these companies, these mills, to do an offer and compromise for them, and they don't pre-qualify them.
I've been talking with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service about some of the common tax-related scams that have been identified by the IRS and included on the agency's 2025 Dirty Dozen tax scams list. We'll continue our conversation about tax scams and especially misleading offers and compromise after a short commercial break. But in the meanwhile, we do want to remind you that if you have questions about tax matters, you can always contact Shasta May directly by calling her office at 1-888-407-1669, by email at smay@mbataxhelp.com, or by going to the company's website, mbataxhelp.com. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Before the break, I was talking with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service about some of the common tax-related scams that have been identified by the IRS and included on the agency's Dirty Dozen tax scams list for 2025. We had been discussing misleading offers and compromise before the break. That's a situation in which some company says they will settle your tax debt with the IRS for pennies on the dollar, but that frequently does not work out for the taxpayer. We now continue that conversation in progress with information about where you can get accurate information about real offers and compromise.
Like you can go online to the IRS website and they have a offer and compromise pre-qualification tool. I can get that out that you can use. I mean, I recommend talking to, a respected, tax preparer to help you to navigate this. But these companies, they get your hopes up. They tell you you're a good candidate. They take thousands of dollars from you. They fill out the paperwork for the offer and compromise. They submit it. And then when it gets rejected, because most of them do, if you aren't qualified and you haven't pre-qualified, and then they just say, oh, IRS turned it down. We're so sorry. We did all the work, but nothing we can do. But we're keeping your $4,000 or $5,000 that we charged you to do this. And so I really want people, this makes me so crazy. And I really want people to know, not a lot of people qualify. There's many things that are taken into consideration. We do offers and compromise in our office. Typically the situation is, say somebody has a tax bill that's been ongoing for years and years, and they may owe, $80, $90, $100,000. And this would be such a great program for them. And if they qualify, the IRS could settle for $10,000 to pay off this huge debt. But the IRS takes in a lot of things into consideration. They take in, your age, your health, the reason why you can't pay. If you're young and healthy and working, the odds are they're gonna want their money, and you're gonna be making payments for a long time. But if you've had a major health issue, a major injury, something that really affects your ability to earn, and you have this big tax bill, or you've lost your job and you've made every attempt to find a new one and you just can't, get back to work. These are all things that are taken into consideration. But you have to give on these forms to submit for this program every ounce of information about your financial situation, your business, your personal, who lives in your household, are there children? And so it's a very complex thing to do. And so you really want to make sure that you get someone to help you that knows what's what. And if you choose to do it on your own, which you absolutely are, can attempt, at least have your tax preparer review and confirm that it looks like you qualify.
It's interesting you mentioned this, and now that I understand what the IRS means by misleading offers and compromise, I'm not going to name who, I'm not going to name what city they're in, but years ago, there was one of these outfits that was running this scam and saying, we can get you an offer and compromise, and you won't have to pay anything. And what they did is they simply continually went back to the IRS and asked for a continuance and delayed and put off the actual process of determining what the offer and compromise would be. And of course, eventually the IRS is going to stop accepting those delays. And then you're the one stuck with the bill, but that person, that less than honest firm, kind of walks away from the whole thing with a lot of your money. Absolutely. I've talked to so many people that have been victim to these companies that do this. And I talked to one guy, he had paid one of these, these mills or whatever. And then, of course, the offer and compromise was denied because he didn't qualify. And then they charged him more to appeal. That's adding insult to injury. It's unbelievable. And these businesses are just out there just doing their thing. And
it's on us. It's on the taxpayer. It's on you. It's on me to educate ourselves and be aware. It's it's an absolute case of buyer beware. This has been going on for a long time, and there's no one out there trying to close these businesses down. They're just out there. And when anybody who's been in debt to the IRS knows it is so stressful. You can't sleep, and you're going to jump at any opportunity to resolve it, especially where they're telling you, oh, pennies on the dollar. Absolutely. This is for me. This is what I've been waiting for. And you're very vulnerable when you have a situation like this. And again, it sounds too good to be true. It just may be. But the offer and compromise is a legitimate program. Absolutely. It's just you've got to be careful about people misrepresenting and telling you qualify without going through. You have to go through a lot. We have to go through a lot to figure out if someone qualifies. We have to get all their financial information. And then we've got to put it all in the system, and then we've got to do the formula. And, not everyone qualifies. But with us, like, if you don't qualify for that, then we will get you an installment agreement. We'll get you on a monthly payment plan. We'll help you to get out of it somehow, or get you on the right track again.
Well, Shasta, just one last question.
Sure.
And great information, of course. But here in the next 2 or 3 minutes, you mentioned on that one, when you sent me the information, that your office sees the misleading offers and compromise the most.
Yes.
Of course, your entire clientele, for the most part, correct me if I'm wrong, is truck drivers. Why are they targeted for this so often?
I think because, with owner-operators, independent contractors, I see this a lot, especially guys in their first year. They know all about trucking. They are brilliant about trucking. But when it comes to understanding, say, the business side and the tax ramifications, they will sometimes be upside down when the tax return is filed, and it's a big shock when we do the tax return, and at the end of the year, in the following year, when it's too late to do anything, that they find out they owe a lot of money, 4, 5, 10, thousands of dollars, and they don't have it. And a lot of times, if a person, say, isn't a bookkeeping client of ours, I really don't know what's going on throughout the year. I only, deal with that client once a year at tax time. And when we do a return and we find out this poor taxpayer, this poor client owes all this money, and then they're trying to, let's say, start payments, but then we're already into the new year and earning in the new year, and it can snowball year after year to where someone can have a huge tax liability. And I hate to say, a lot of our trucking clients end up like this. Not a lot, but there's a percentage. There's a specific percentage. And I think it isn't anyone's trying to not do the right thing or not pay the taxes they owe. It's simply they're just not aware of how quickly and how much you have to pay in on your earnings. And when you're self-employed, you pay more than if you were an employee. You're paying not only federal and state income tax, you're also paying your self-employment tax, which is your Social Security. There's no employer matching that. So there you've got that extra percentage on top of everything else that you've got to pay in. And it really can come as a shock. And it's hard to let people know ahead of time, before the fact, all this information.
Well, Shasta, thank you very much for the information, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I've been talking with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping about some common tax-related scams. That's our program for today. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
A son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
My kids.
chrome.
And I am
I am.
a professional truck driver.
And together, we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.